Good afternoon and welcome to a brand spanking new segment, rather obviously titled In Conversation With, a part of the Reset and Go Season 3. This segment is specially designed to showcase the backstories of individuals who have made an impact. Now, who can resist an hour of tete-a-tete over a cup of tea on a Saturday afternoon? And during this hour, we will delve right into the conversation around stories that need to be told of modern day icons. Luminary Learning Solutions crafted this segment so that you, our audience, can be inspired to truly thrive. So before we proceed, few house rules very quickly. I'm Anton Sayalan and I will be your host this afternoon, and I will take you through an hour of free-flowing discussion. Should you have any questions for our guests, feel free to use the chat option on MS Teams, or feel free to drop me a WhatsApp message on +94 7722 66622. Your questions will be woven into the conversation and we will take it from there. So get ready, sit back and enjoy this conversation. In today's conversation, it is my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce a fantastic gentleman, Arthur Carmazzi, the founder of Directive Communication Methodology and a global top 10 leadership guru. He is ranked number 4 as a global thought leader with over 21 years of experience specializing in psychological approaches to leadership and corporate culture transformation. He is a renowned motivational leadership keynote speaker and a trainer in the Asian region, and has advanced corporate training with innovative techniques and tools that have been acknowledged by some of the world's greatest organizations. He's also a best-selling author. Research done by Arthur Carmazzi on the genetic foundations of the brain's ambiguity, relief, clarity getting processes have been inspiration of colored brain model used across multinationals in 52 countries. DCI has over 400 licensed directive communications, psychology, leadership, and culture trainers in 18 different countries who are delivering value to clients globally. Well, on that note, a very good evening to you, Arthur, all the way from Indonesia, Bali, to be specific.
There you go. How are you? Good. It's afternoon here, so hey, how you doing?
Excellent. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, Arthur, my pleasure.
Before we kind of dive in, I'm gonna pick on one of your own quotes, and I think you said, "Passion stems from the absolute belief that your actions will present an opportunity to become something more than you already are. To lead change, we must manifest an environment to turn these beliefs into reality." Now, I know so many lessons in life as far as where you come from and so many experiences. But let's look at some of your memorable moments in your life as you transition from, if I remember, a fat kid at school in the US to a chilled out man in Bali. So you've seen a number of changes in reality. I know it's hard to imagine you being a fat kid, but you've seen the changes in reality to get you where you are today, Arthur. But you know, born to a Spanish-Italian family, if I got that right, in Nevada, USA. But
yes, that's right.
Growing up in the States, did you always dream of this life, this role, this responsibility that you have today, that you've taken on to educate others? Was that in the back of your mind always?
No, never really thought of it. I thought I was going to be a movie star or an artist.
I think you can do that both.
or a famous scientist. There you go. There's all these different things all kind of at the same time. But you remember, you know, even though it's America, I was growing up in a small town called Carson City, and at the time there was about 10,000 people and 20,000 cows.
Wow. You know, you said movie stars, and I'm getting this Doctor Strange vibe here. you know. And I get this feeling we're almost there on that. So hold on to the thought of being a movie star. I guess it's not lost after all. But tell me something. You've mentioned that when you moved in, you had your challenges as a kid. You failed in maths and English, and that bothered you for a bit. But if I remember correctly, from that to authoring best-selling, what happened?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I mean, see, here's the thing, right? I mean, when I was a kid, my teachers used to compare me to all of the other kids. And quite honestly, I just didn't really compare. And so they called my parents and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Carmazzi, your son Arthur is special. And so what happened is they said, well, we need to put him in a special children's class. So off I go to the special kids class, right? Okay. And so here I am in this special kids class, and there's this teacher, Mrs. Kelly, and she is so sweet and so kind, and she is like really, comforting and makes me feel like it's okay to be stupid. But, and I was very happy, and I like, obviously, since I wanted to be a movie star, I like attention, right? And, it turns out that the more stupid that I acted, the more attention that I got. So I learned to act even more stupid. And so after a while, though, the school changed the rules, and they said, no, before you can go to high school, you have to have an algebra class. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like algebra, isn't that like math for smart kids? I can't do that. They said, no, you actually have to go. And like, oh my gosh. So I went into my algebra class, and guess what I got? My very first report card. Guess what I got?
A B, a C.
Oh, I got an F. I was a stupid kid. And everybody had been telling me that. It was, so I believed it. But this is where things changed, because Mr. Backus, he was my 8th grade algebra teacher. He had this super, super shiny bald head and these glasses that, were like really thick. And he always wore this brown corduroy coat. And, the thing is that he sat down with me after I got this report card, even though nobody was really surprised. Even my parents were, so, it is what it is, right? And he sat down with me. And he asked me some questions. He put his algebra problem on the board. He says, can you tell me what the answer is? And I, of course, what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to show your work, right? So he ended up, he says, no, don't show your work. Don't show your work. Just look at the problem and try to tell me the answer. I said, well, it's this. And he said, that's right. Okay. So then he put another simple problem on the board and says, okay, tell me the answer. And he said, it's this. And he said, that's right. And so, okay. He says, Arthur, would you like some extra credit? And I'm, well, yeah, I want to go to high school. So he said, okay, we're going to have a game every Friday, okay, where you get to go in front of the class and you get to compete with other students, okay, doing exactly the same thing you're going to do. And it's like, okay, you want me to go in front of all of my peers who basically think I'm dumb and basically compete on math, right? And he said, yeah, but you'll be great. And so I was like, well, okay, what have I got to lose, right? So I went up, and it turns out that I was good at this game. But here's the thing. See, I was good at this game in front of an entire class of my peers.
Wow.
Okay, and after about 3 weeks of doing this game, some of these other kids would come up to me and say, hey, Arthur, can you help me with my homework? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these kids think I'm smart. And I make up something like, my mom's kind of waiting for me, sorry. But one day, Lynn Pachalski, this beautiful 8th grade girl, comes up to me and says, Arthur, can you help me with my homework? And I'm like, yeah. And I learned to be smart. And see, the thing is that the only thing, he didn't make me smarter. He simply found a different way for me to basically feel smart, which changed my attitude, which changed everything for me in the future.
Amazing. So you kind of flipped when you saw that beautiful girl coming in and asking you the question. You forgot about the excuses. Interesting, Arthur. Interesting. I did read that you had challenges finding dates for prom, and then you got to be about 70% success rate. a
That
little
was
later in
that's a
life.
totally different story.
That's another story. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I was
Interesting.
deathly afraid of girls. Deathly afraid of girls.
But interesting your takeaway from that particular incident where your teacher saw something in you and made you special. Because kind of saying every kid is special, right?
Well, it's not
But
that he made
for a
me
long
special.
time in your life,
He just found something that I was good at and helped me be good at it in front of peers, so that now the perception of the environment changed, right? See, I mean, think about it, okay? If you put a kid in an environment where he's never good enough, okay, eventually he's going to think he's just never good enough. No matter how smart he is. I mean, you read these stories where these kids that are getting straight A's and in these like super competitive schools get a B and commit suicide. Oh my gosh, and it's not because they're incompetent, obviously. It's because the environment sometimes makes them feel that they're not good enough. And the only thing this teacher did was he helped me to find a way that I could show that I was competent in some area, which again changed my attitude towards everything.
fair point. Arthur, in one of your comments, you've said that selfishness was the motivator of your younger days. Could you kind of elaborate as to why is that? And I'm curious, and how can that kind of be applied to today in our lives?
Well,
it's an interesting take.
See, here's the thing: selfishness can go both ways, right? I was kind of an asshole when I was younger, and there's still, it is still a journey, right? Because sometimes, you find yourself doing stuff that, you're, is that me, really? Okay, and you find that, that element of selfishness was basically focusing on what I wanted to achieve. And, and of course that also eventually, like, when I got over this whole fear of women and everything else, I had lots of girlfriends and everything else. But the problem was that I never kept them because I was always focused on building a business. So my time was more towards what I wanted to do and, not necessarily in the relationship, which, doesn't necessarily help relationships. And then you've got this situation where you become unbalanced, but you achieve things. Okay, now, as you get older, you want more balance in your life. But, so again, it's got to be that mix of understanding what you want to achieve, focusing on it. And again, that element of selfishness was, this is where I want to go. I want to achieve this and I'm going to do it. And, and it, that element of selfishness also basically gives you that advantage to basically spend your time in places where it needs to be spent, at least up until where you reach a specific point. Now, of course, you also give up things in the process. So but that was my journey.
Talking of journeys, not just your experiences, but at some point in life, I know you've had a near-death experience, but you also decided to. Oh, fantastic! Do tell us about them, and also you decided then to travel, and I'm guessing you traveled quite a bit before settling into Bali.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey and tell us about your best memory from out of all of that.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, travel has always been a passion, basically. I mean, at the end of the day, travel is about experience. It's about learning. It's about, becoming more of who you can be, at least for me. I mean, that was part of that real kind of connection to the world, rather than just, I grew up in this little tiny small town. I needed to be a global citizen rather than a small town boy. And again, that was one of the things that motivated me. And so I would find all kinds of reasons to essentially fund my traveling when I was young. And in the beginning, of course, the one of the and I'm going to tell you this, but one of the reasons why I had a near-death experience was because some of the things that I was doing were not necessarily all kind of legal, right? Okay, and so what ended up happening is that I got stabbed. In fact, after I managed to get to the hospital, the doctor told me that if it was just 1 millimeter off to the right, it would have severed my carotid artery, and then I would have died of internal bleeding.
Wow.
So that near-death experience was the one where I really ended up kind of reevaluating my life. And like I said, I was kind of an asshole at the time and a womanizer and everything. And so what ended up happening was that I decided that I need to change my legacy, because at that time, I was doing some shady stuff, and it paid well, but it wasn't really the person that I wanted to be in the future after kind of, almost dying. So I thought, yeah, I need to change my life. And so at that time, that's when I literally sold everything and started to travel.
But in my understanding of where you ended up, so you went through that experience. Let's not go into the shady stuff. I promise you we won't dive into that. But you ended up settling in Korea and having a proper job, fancy stuff, and you made your lifestyle back up again. Now, despite that and having that dream job, you still decided to go on your own. What happened?
Yeah, it was well, okay, so I was managing director of this consulting company, and I had actually arranged that because I wanted to be in Korea because I met this girl from Korea. Okay, so it was all basically because of a woman, and so anyway, I'm in that kind of situation. It was great. It was really fun. Everything else, I learned tons. But again, there was this element where I thought, no, I'm doing this for these guys, and they're making tons of money, so I want to do it for myself. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to be able to go ahead and I'm going to take some of these ideas that have done so well, and I'm going to go to Singapore and apply them there. And well, that didn't quite work out as planned, but that was the idea, right? So you've got this, there's always more. And I've always been rather ambitious. I'm still ambitious. There's still the element of global domination.
Arthur, with us for a bit, for those of us, and I see some new numbers joining us this afternoon. We are in conversation with Arthur Carmazzi, the Chief Awesomeness Officer, all the way from Bali, Indonesia, designed to bring us inspiration through the backstories of his life. So, Korea, girl, moving into being an entrepreneur, you moved into Bali. Tell me, Bali was not because of a girl.
No.
It was because of the beach.
No. It was neither. Okay, so here I am. First of all, at this time, I'm living in Singapore. I find myself $500,000 in debt. All right. So I got this job, and in this job, basically, when you first get a job, like, you're really excited. It's like, wow, I'm going to, 1 year later, I'm going to be like this, and 5 years later, this is going to happen. And, you got these ideas of what's going to happen, all these things. Anyway, after about like 2-3 weeks, you start noticing that, it's not really as fun as it looks, and you know, like everybody's blaming everybody, and these people are blaming over here, and then oh my gosh, what is wrong with these people? So I had come up with these really cool ideas. I mean, you know, you've come up with cool ideas in your job before too, right? I was this department head in this huge company, so it was a good job because, you know, I needed to pay back all of this stuff, all this money, and so from being an entrepreneur, which didn't work out, right? So I go into this, you know, these other department heads, and, you know, I give them all these different ideas, and I'm telling them, hey, you know, look, you got some resources, I got some resources, we could do all these things together that'll help the organization. And they look, you know, said, you know, we understand that you are new here, okay, but look, you do your thing, and we'll do our thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, what is wrong with these people? But I thought, no way, man, I can make it happen. I can do things. I mean, you know, you felt that way, right? You can really make a difference. 4.5 months later, you know what happened? I started blaming people, okay? And then people would come up to me, hey, Arthur, can you help me with this? I said, look, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. I got sucked into this whole culture. And the worst part was that life sucked. I mean, I became an underachiever. I was kind of doing busy work, and I wasn't really being the kind of person that I wanted to be, and I felt stuck in this job, and I couldn't quit because I needed the money. And so what ended up happening was that in fact that element was where I originally started the journey that led me to where I am now, because that was, you know, that's where I got, you know, that's where I founded directive communication psychology. I wanted to fix my problem. It wasn't the people. I found out that it wasn't the people. I went and talked to these other department heads, those bad people. I thought it was them that were actually causing my problems, but I found out that was something bigger. It was the culture. And so I wanted to find out all of this stuff. So after about 9 months of doing research and so on, you know, ended up applying some of this. And then we ended up saving the company $17,000 a week in wastage. And then I started writing articles, got on the radio, got on TV, and then I was able to quit my job. And so I started doing this for other companies out of Singapore. But then, you know, I was still in debt. And so what ended up happening is that I thought, all right, I need to, you know, now I need to franchise. I need to license this so that other people can do it too. So what happened was that I thought, okay, you know, what sounds better? Come to Arthur's flat in Singapore, or, you know, to this hotel in Singapore and get certified in directive communication psychology and get licensed, or come to Arthur's villa in Bali and get certified in lifestyle. Okay, so, you know, so basically it was, I chose Bali because of a marketing reason. Plus, here's the thing, kicker. Here's always the extra benefits. Because in Singapore, you'd hire I mean, to franchise something, I mean, you need lots of stuff. You need web guys, you need graphic designers, you need all of this whole team of people, programmers and everything to design all this stuff. And in Singapore, it's freaking expensive. So I moved to Bali. I was able to get, you know, an entire team of people to do this for what it would cost me to hire 2 people in Singapore. And so that basically helped me to build the infrastructure of the license, of the DC psychology license and the culture consulting license and all of these different things, so that we were able to expand from there. And that helped me to get out of debt within 2 years.
Wow, $500,000 in 2 years. Arthur, you just mentioned that people would be underachievers, and you've said this again and again a few times. Why is that? I mean, why do you look at it from that perspective? And then how do you overcome that?
Well, okay. See, you don't become an underachiever on purpose. I mean, it's like, you're going to say, well, you know, I think I'll be an underachiever. What happens is that you literally have these great plans. You have these great ideas. The problem is that the environment you're in doesn't support where you think you could potentially go. And this is where, again, you know, all the work in organizational culture and leadership comes from, is because if you understand what creates an environment where a person that has skill, that has potential, that has innovation, that has great ideas, and has passion to apply them, why that person becomes an underachiever because of, and you understand the environment that makes that happen, then you can solve the problem, and you can basically bring out or help create environments that bring out the best in the people that are in them. And that's really the key. I mean, you'll notice, right? I mean, just think about it for everybody that's out there. Okay, do you have friends? Okay, and I don't mean Facebook friends. I mean like real ones, right? And so you've got these friends, right? And that you hang out with, and well, maybe not now because of COVID, but those friends will bring out certain facets of who you are. Then you're at work, right? Now, this group of people brings out other behaviors. And then you've got your family who brings out other behaviors. And then you've got a different group of friends that bring out other behaviors. Why? Okay. It's not like you're changing your behavior on purpose. The environments very specifically affect your psychology. And DC psychology essentially is the science that helps you understand exactly why and how that happens so that you can create environments that actually bring out the best of who you are rather than in some cases the worst.
Fair point. Arthur, interesting that you've learned, I mean, you've clearly done some research based on your own experience, and you've seen how you were stifled, how you got caught to that culture, and right. You became the naysayer, so to speak, and then you've sort of beaten those odds to become, the can I say, the driver, the force in wanting to change organizations. And I can't quite fathom what exactly was your biggest challenge in life for you to be this driven. And I'm not talking about the movie star bit that you've got, but to be actually driven, this animated, and you are that in both real life and that's the way you are, right? That's who you are.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge? How did you overcome that?
Wow, my biggest challenge, honestly, my biggest challenge was getting over being an asshole. It's not that easy. You think that, the thing is, you don't see that you're an asshole until, you start getting reflection from, multiple points. And then the biggest barrier is believing people, right? Because you've got these barriers where you think, oh, I'm still awesome, right? It's like, no, I'm not an awesome. I'm not an asshole because I'm too good, right? So you got, and that literally has probably been my biggest challenge was just getting over myself.
I mean, interesting, right? People, and you're right, people will not accept who they are and what they are, and it takes a lot to accept if you're in the fault, if you're in the wrong, right? When it comes to making changes, and I have to agree with you, and you constantly kept driving that change within you to get to where you are today, and you mentioned at various stages throughout your life, you were on the other side of the fence, which means you're clearly looking at constant progress. Now, is that something that you would say is mandatory, a must for everyone? Oh, constant progress?
Yeah. Okay, let's just look at the recent pandemic, right? There's even though the pandemic's been going on for 5 months, there's still people's like, when's it going back? When's it going back? And they're not trying to do anything to go with it. The moment that something happens, that the moment that there's a big change or there's a potential for change, if you don't move on it, if you don't you progress with it, eventually it's going to run you over. We were very fortunate in that in March, we had just completed organizational culture certification, online certification, and got it accredited. And so we just did a few extra things to make it pandemic ready. And we really did very well in certifying all these different consultants, and then we actually helped to get them jobs because all of these organizations were able to use the pandemic or use the element of improving culture to kind of connect people and reconnect them when people are kind of feeling freaked out. So it was a
Sure.
very positive thing for the clients as well as the consultants themselves.
Fair enough, and I think that's lucky in one way, or timing. Arthur, in one of your statements, and if I recall that correctly, you had a vision for your future, and you wanted to be a caring individual that seeks to make a difference in the world. You wanted to be the man who will make the difference. What I am keen to understand, and also from an inspirational point of view, can you elaborate on that and explain your roadmap to reaching that? Because your designation, Chief Awesomeness Officer, is fantastic. That designation itself gives a lot of enthusiasm to know more. It's a driver on its own. But what's your roadmap to becoming the man who will make the difference?
I mean, first of all, it started with almost dying. So that was one of the keys. I don't recommend that as a motivator, but that's one of the things, because I wasn't really, like I said, I was kind of an asshole, and so I was like, okay, wait a minute, I want to change, I want to be better, I want to make a difference, I want to make an impact, I want to kind of make up for the bad stuff I've done. And so I mean, here's the thing, okay? There are people like Mother Teresa who will go in and they do massive stuff and everything else. That's not me. There's some really altruistic people who really can give of themselves. Sure. and they're just genuine about it. And I'm not like that. Okay. But here's the thing that I am. Okay. I know that what we've developed, okay, helps people who never actually knew that they could be helped or could have something better. So my choice of focusing on organizations and improving cultures in organizations is one of the reasons is because people in these organizations, about 95% of them will never go into any personal development. But when you combine organizational and personal development together, both the organization benefits and the individuals benefit, okay? And, at the same time, we make money. So the more money you have, the more organizations that you can work with, the bigger, projects that you can create. And so therefore, the development of wealth in my particular style of helping the world is also directly related to the amount of reach that we can do in achieving more harmony and a better quality of life in people who would never usually even seek a better quality of life.
Fair enough. Arthur, I've got a question from the audience, taking us back to a conversation we had a little while ago. Oh, okay. On the point about how your specific teacher, I think it's your maths teacher that they're referring to, identified the way you learned and made sure that you succeeded without putting you down and letting you go. How do you apply that to the corporate world today? How can it be applied to the corporate world today?
All right.
Well, interesting question.
And it's actually, this is part of one of the things we do, right? All right. So first of all, a lot of the work that I've done, which you mentioned earlier, is about the brain's ambiguity relief process. All right. Now, the brain's ambiguity relief process basically is one very simple thing: how you get clarity. Now, how you get clarity is also connected to, of course, clarity is connected to long-term retention, which basically means learning. Okay, but it's also related to process and the type of or sequence of action that you take. So and what we've done is there's a model called colored brain, which identifies and measures the brain's ambiguity relief process. So if you understand, for example, in my case, I have chaotic processing. Now, based on the research, there's actually there are certain disorders that people have that are connected to how they process. So, for example, chaotic processing is the normal version of ADHD. So if you want to have this process of ambiguity relief, chaotic processing, or what we call green brain to make it easy, if you had the extreme version, it's ADHD, which I have. Okay, so this is why I'm jumping around all the time, right? And so the and it's also difficult to pay attention for short periods and for longer periods of time. But anyway, okay, so that's kind of like on the extreme side. But there are people who don't have ADHD that have chaotic processing. That's how they approach things. In order to get clarity, they actually have to take action. Okay, they have to try stuff. They have to go in. They ask questions, feedback. Well, on the other hand, let's take, for example, what we call red brain or linear processing. Linear processing is specifically about structure. They find or create structure in order to get clarity. Now, they don't act on this until they have clarity. Well, say, for example, the green brain, okay, chaotic processing, need to act before they get clarity, while the linear processing needs to get clarity before they act. Okay, so let's just take those two, right? Okay. When you are in let's say, for example, in a school system where maybe the teacher maybe has linear processing, do this, do this, do this, boom, okay, there you are. Okay, in an organization, the manager says, do this, do this, do this, here's the structure, do this, here's like this, make it like this, do this. Okay, so let's say you don't have linear processing. Okay, you're gonna go, oh my gosh, this is just, this guy is an idiot. Why, why don't we just go? Why don't we just do this? I mean, come on, let's just, if we just do this, we do this, we do this. And the other guys and the manager's going like, what? No, you do structure. Why? Because it's worked for him. Because he's literally looking through colored glasses. The way that he sees it, it's common sense, right? But the way you see it, the guy is an idiot because it doesn't make sense to you. Okay, because you have different colored glasses, and because you have different colored glasses, now you're thinking that this person disrespects you or doesn't trust you, and the person basically loses trust because they say, oh, this guy obviously, doesn't know how to do it right, because for him it's common sense, and for you it's also a different common sense. The problem is that there's no actual common sense. Common sense is not a real thing. It is the perception of self imposed on others, right? Which sucks, but it's real. And so what ends up happening is that you have these other ambiguity relief processes that affect trust in a group. And for that matter, that trust also affects competence, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you feel that, okay, you know what, just tell me what to do. I'll do it your way. Fine. Okay. You've given up. You have just decided to become an underachiever.
Correct. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess at certain points in our life, in my life, I could relate to that example, and I'm sure there are many who would relate to that. We are, ladies and gentlemen, in conversation with Arthur Carmazzi, the Chief Awesomeness Officer of Direct Communication International, all the way from Bali, Indonesia. Arthur, thank you very much for that. But I have a question that I'm going to take you on from a different perspective. Okay. Let's go back to disciplines and the combination of disciplines. Your success to where you are stemmed from that combination, right? And amazingly, majored in electrical engineering, chemistry, psychology, marketing, business management, and I don't have enough notes to and I think I can go on without ever finishing a degree. But
yeah, they didn't connect. Go figure. You got like psychology and chemistry for some reason doesn't connect. I don't know. Seemed okay to me. You know, the problem was that I wasn't looking for the piece of paper. I was very excited about the knowledge. I wanted to learn all kinds of stuff. Okay, and you know, and back then especially, at that time when I was in university, I got a whole bunch of students together, and we had this little startup for the Carmazzi X1 Crusader, the car of the future, that was voice actuated, and it had all kinds of stuff. In fact, we were the first to use an Intel microcontroller to actually change analog technology to digital, or analog signals to digital, so that we could actually put digital signals in the car itself to regulate stuff. And so anyway, we did a whole bunch of cool stuff that never ended up doing anything because I sucked at business. But yeah, but it was such a great learning experience. Just that I learned more in that business where I, you know, failed than I did in anything I learned at school.
But that's an interesting take, Arthur, right? And quite a lot of people in today's world look at the paper qualification or the marks. You know, you got to hit 100 out of 100 or a 90 out of 100. And we always keep saying, even if you got a 70, you still pass. But more than the marks, do you actually learn? And interesting that you bring out, despite the fact that they didn't connect, there's so much to take away. You learn the subject. But what I find very interesting, Arthur, is that despite all of those challenges, the entrepreneurial spirit within you wasn't, or could not be quelled. Let me put it that way. Because, you know, you were an entrepreneur at school, and I was told that you sold bubble gums and making a killing profit while at school. And a different product that I don't want to mention on air, right? But from a kid, from a very young entrepreneur to the entrepreneur that you are now, or that you were a couple of years back, you've seen the ups and downs. You've burned your fingers. You've come around to it. What's the difference? What's the learning?
Wow. Okay. Anyway, I mean, when it comes to the education thing, don't get me started on that. I've got an entire website with free education resources based on my specific take on the new version of education. Because people, kids, young adults do not need teachers in today's age to give them content. Okay. That's not the role of a teacher has to change, okay? Because the kids, the young adults can find the content themselves, and they can teach each other the content. That's okay. The real trick is creating leaders so that the kids themselves can apply the research, take the research, break it, create something new, build on what has already existed in the past. Don't accept it as, I mean, you know, there's still teachers. I have to go to my kid's school, okay, and complain to the faculty and the principal, because they're still teaching kids that the whole right brain, left brain thing, where you're more creative on this and you're more you're logical with the left brain and more creative in the right brain. Is like, oh my gosh, it's already been 8 years since that's been disproven, and all of this other research that supports why that's not true, okay? And they're still teaching this stuff, okay? And, you know, and the thing is that the teachers are teaching content rather than attitude. They're teaching information that can be found easily on YouTube rather than the discipline to be able to help and others to learn and develop in the process. Okay, they are basically teaching you to stay there and listen and absorb rather than be a leader and help others to improve themselves. Okay, which anyway, like I said, don't get me, you know, and homework, oh my gosh, homework, right? I mean, what happened to your homework? Do you know? You know, here, let me show you something. Okay, somebody said, oh, you know, homework is important for, you know, things. And I said, look, you know, if you took if you just took the same stuff that you are already learning and you applied it, okay, into creating a book, okay, people, the kids would actually have a reason to do the homework, because by the end of this whole thing, you could combine subjects and write a book about it, whether, you know, in whatever that book is about. And they say, oh no, kids can never write a book. So I got my 7-year-old and my 10-year-old to write books, okay, which people said they're not, you know, it's not going to happen. So, you know, people are underestimating young people. Teachers sometimes underestimate young people and try to spoon feed them rather than coach them. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of PDFs and free stuff on leadership.university if you want to get it, because that's one of my passions is education.
I don't want to dive into it. I guess we don't have enough time to go into deep waters on your passion on that subject. Arthur, your current business, you know, the Chief Awesomeness bit, you are passionate about making that, and this Directive Communication International, and you're doing this in the Asian region. I've seen you in the Middle East, I've seen you around, and the Middle East, correct, and I've seen you in the Middle East doing this. Tell us a little bit about, you know, the kind of, what drives you to support global organizations to, can I say, change their organizational culture? Because, you know, we've seen corporates, we meet corporates on a day-to-day basis, and no one, like you said earlier on, no one readily accepts the fact that, you know, A, or there is a problem with my culture, or B, let me do something about it, or I need to change it. These statements don't readily come out. You know, how do you go about doing that? What drives you to go through despite all those, you know, negativities that come in the way?
I mean, first of all, here's the thing, all right? People are becoming more aware that organizational culture is important, but the drive, I mean, eventually goes back to that original story that we told of me being a stupid kid, right? And my own experience in the company that I was working for. When I was, quote, an underachiever, I hated my job. I wasn't happy. It affected my personal life. I felt stuck. And I mean, what kind of a life is that? So, you know, when you talked about me making a difference, that's the difference I want to make. I want to make a difference in people's lives and also young people's lives, where, I mean, they go to work and it's like, wow, I get to go to work today. And, you know, that the amount of time we spend at work, if you can just fix that one part in an individual's life, that really has a huge impact on the quality of their life. Plus, it drastically improves their ability to support the organization itself. The problem is that a lot of times leaders are not aware of what they're doing. And sometimes they think they're doing something, but they're not. I mean, we've even got a tool for this, which measures perception gaps, right? Because, you know, sometimes you think you're being supportive, but everybody else thinks you're being a control freak, okay? And you don't know because they won't tell you, okay? Because you're the boss. And so by measuring and understanding and you know, again, when, you know, talking about ambiguity relief and the colored brain and, you know, and benchmarking your culture, I mean, that's really the thing. See, most of the things that really help people to see that they need help with their culture is by doing a culture audit, a simple one, not a big giant one that's going to be crazy expensive, but a simple culture audit, right? So here's what we find. Okay, we got a tool called the Culture Evolution Tool. Okay, well, actually it's a little bit longer than that, but anyway, we just call it the Culture Evolution Tool. But the anyway, so what happens is that when organizations go through and they get the results of the level of evolution that their culture is at, more than 60% are in the blame culture, which is the lowest productive culture possible. Okay, and it's kind of like going into the doctor, right? And you go to the doctor and say, "Oh, doctor, my elbow hurts." And the doctor says, "Okay, let me check it out, take some tests." And they come back to you and say, "Hey, the tests are back. Sorry, you have cancer." It's like, huh? I mean, suddenly your focus changes, right? Because you know that the problem is actually much bigger than you actually thought. And so then when, you know, I mean, even just a little bit of culture evolution can drastically improve the bottom line and the productivity and, for that matter, the engagement of individuals within the organization.
And Arthur, you do say that you want to change and you work with the organizations, but when you do get into organizations, does it have to, and do you have to change the entire organization? Or could you work with a smaller team or a smaller group of individuals and build it through? Is that a possibility in your approach?
Well, here's the way that we usually, I mean, first of all, okay, a complete culture change program where it is an implementation program is generally a little expensive. So what happens is that people are, you know, within the organization are going to generally test you. So there's usually a test within a team or a department to see how you can improve the performance of that team or department. And then once they see the results from there, then they go, wow, you know, if we could apply this to the entire organization, and that's where you actually end up getting the job. And we have right now, we have almost 100 organizational culture consultants using our methodology all over the world.
A reference point for someone to work with, right? A question from the audience. Dear Arthur, what are the top 2 challenges within an organization when it comes to changing the culture? Can you the leadership. Top 2 challenges or 3?
Yeah, I mean, the leadership is the first challenge. I mean, really, that's the issue. Just to give you an idea, we had done some work for Emirates, which we were very successful with. So another airline, which I won't mention, that happens to be in Malaysia, called us in, and they asked us to, hey, we want to go ahead and do this kind of thing that you did with Emirates, and then like. Great. Okay, so here's the criteria. In order for this to work, here's the criteria. Okay, and when we got to the part that the senior management team needs to be involved, what happened was that they said, "Oh, we're very busy. We don't have time." And I said, "But it won't work if you don't do that." And they said, "Well, sorry."
Wow. Well,
so the management team is going to be the first barrier, right? Because first of all, there's only, right now we're in the PFB era, post-Facebook era, okay? You can't do the same old stuff where the management comes up and decides how to have the culture. It doesn't work, right? I mean, it's got to think about it. You get 5 people at the top telling 1,000 other people how to think and believe and feel. I don't think so. It's a lot easier to get 1,000 people to tell those people at the top how they want to think and feel. And you know what? Most of the time it's the same. It's just like when you tell your kids, hey, don't go and get the cookies, okay? And they go and find the way to get the cookies anyway when you're not looking, okay? Because they still want the cookies. But when you tell them not to, it becomes different, right? So when the management tells you something, it's very different than if you decide that's what you want.
Fair enough. All right.
So that's the first one. Okay, is that particular element? That's the first one. Okay, the second one is going to be probably the people. Okay, I mean, well, first of all, you can only do a back to that same one, sorry. Okay, you can only do a bottom-up initiative,
Sure.
Okay? bottom-up initiative is going to be the key thing, because and it's not difficult. There's a whole, if you just type into Google leading organizational culture, you'll find the document that says the ultimate guide to leading organizational culture, and it's got the entire process on there. Okay, so the second element, okay, that I say would be the most difficult is going to be, most people think it's time, okay? But here's the thing, because people, and again, another part of the criteria of a successful organizational culture program is that it has to be done quickly, okay? If people are not patient anymore, if they don't see fast results, they're gonna check out. They're going to basically go, oh gosh, not another management thing. And so what ends up happening is that they will essentially not move forward, because then they've already decided that it's not going to work, and then it becomes very difficult for people to actually try to make it work, and eventually everybody gives up. But the moment that you start seeing results in a week, that's when suddenly it's like, whoa, they start seeing results, and they start seeing that this is actually working, and they feel that they're making an impact, and they feel that they actually have a voice in it. And man, then they get excited and they push it through. The people make it happen. And that's why we call it the revolution process, because every culture change, every sustainable change starts with the people.
Great. So you've covered the two challenges, and I think you were spot on with that analysis. I'm going to ask you about two other things, and I'm mindful of the time, Arthur. Your trademark workshops, innovation, leadership, and team colors. I know you touched on colors, so I thought I would ask you that. Do you want to elaborate as to what's unique about these two workshops?
Well, okay. So first of all, I mean, team colors is essentially, it's a team. It's using colored brain, okay, in order to create high-performing teams, and they're all industry specific. Okay, so it's not like team building where you go out and do it and do stuff in jungles and stuff. I mean, people really get to understand each other in depth. The psychology of why they've been having issues with each other and so on. Okay, and the other one, the other flagship program is the Heroes Way. It's a leadership program, and it's a holistic leadership program. In fact, people that go through that program are also entitled to get a certificate from the American Institute of Business Psychology in leadership psychology when they actually show implementation of what they've done in that program. And so those are the two main programs that we do. And the holistic element or the holistic leadership program, the Heroes Way, that one is all about creating an ideal leadership identity where you can affect the environment and the culture that you're in. And then, of course, we have certifications where, people can be certified to deliver these programs in DC psychology, and also certified organizational culture consultant programs as well.
Great. Arthur, I know we've run out of time, so just before we wrap up, I want to know, you've taken this role of, the Chief Awesomeness Officer, and you've taken the vision to a next level in order to be the change, to make the change. Your key motivator is to make a marked difference. And we heard this in every bit throughout this 1 hour's conversation. My question to you, I guess, would be, what is your message to the modern day leader in making a difference within their organization?
Wow. Okay, here's the thing. One of the ultimate elements of being a leader is not for people to say, wow, you're awesome. The biggest thing of being a leader is to create an environment where people themselves can be leaders and can achieve personal success in the process of achieving organizational results. And so if you really want to make a difference in the organization, help your people to be leaders, help to create environments that will support them to be better leaders, and literally build up their potential through letting them fail and helping them to fail intelligently. A lot of people tend to try to stop people from failing by just telling them what to do. And of course, you know, again, when I tell you what to do, from my perspective, something that worked for me may not necessarily work for you. It's kind of like, you know, that special enchilada recipe, right? Where, you know, it's like when you make it, it's like, amazing, right? But the way that, you know, when you tell somebody else the recipe, it never tastes the same.
And you wonder why.
Exactly.
Right. Arthur Carmazzi, Chief Awesomeness Officer. Thank you very, very much, sir, for carving out a moment in time from your undoubtedly busy schedule. And I know, and I can honestly say that this hour has been a thrilling one indeed. Thank you very, very much for the stories, and what stories indeed. An amazing takeaway of absolute inspiration. On that note, I must say, don't let go of your dream to be a movie star, Arthur. I think you definitely have that star quality. Pursue it. Who knows? Doctor Strange Part 2.
There you go.
And to our audience, thank you for staying tuned. And I hope you enjoyed this segment as much as I've enjoyed having this conversation with Arthur. We do have another interesting personality lined up for you coming up next week. Do watch our social media space. We will share Arthur's resource details and websites on our social media over the next few days, and the video of this would be up on our YouTube channel. So if you've missed it, or if you've missed parts of it, do click in and view. So thank you very much. A quick shout out to our technology partners, H1, for going strong with our third season. On that note, I bid you a wonderful rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive.